where we're going to see a lot of success. It's more of a long-range plan than a short range, but I really feel like, if we're going to see long-term success, long-term gains in STEM careers, then that's where we're going to have to start kind of focusing. So it's really important to focus on the entrepreneurs and the adults that are here now, but it's also important to kind of lay those seeds of change and of education and kids who are in elementary school and kids who are, even by high school, I kind of feel like you're kind of getting too late, but definitely elementary school, middle school, it's really important to kind of target it at that age.
I would agree, and to piggyback off of that, I think that these programs are a great introduction to the technology industry as a whole, but everyone isn't a developer, everyone isn't, doesn't have the DNA of a software engineer, nor do they want to. But what these programs do very well is, again, give an introduction to the industry as a whole. So perhaps, being a developer isn't your strong suit, but you really have a knack for UI design or UX. And if you're talking about wearables and things within the Internet of Things, you're introducing industrial design. So programs like this definitely expose a wealth of other careers and disciplines that are also extremely relevant with the technology industry. Sure.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I mean, there's definitely more than one way to get your foot in the door in the tech industry, be that through coding or, with me, for example, it kind of started with journalism. I was always very passionate about technology, took a coding class in high school, but kind of got discouraged, so I did not pursue it in college. I still have some regrets, but at least I've now been able to use journalism to then write about technology. And so that's just kind of another solution. And then even other than media, there's also help for education. Like there are definitely several different ways to get involved that don't require coding.
Yeah, and so part of my fear is that we view this coding push as, to some degree, somewhat of a panacea that now all of a sudden everybody's going to be wonderful in a few years, and it just doesn't. So since I've had my fund, my exit has been Michael Siebel, who is, by the way, a brother who's making money, but he doesn't code, but he's arguably one of the,
yes.
and he's a partner at Y Combinator now, and I would say that he's probably one of the most sought after advisors at Y Combinator, black, and he doesn't code. And arguably my best entrepreneur is Fred Hudson, who's at Pigeon League, who spent 4 years in jail. He didn't go to Stanford. He didn't go to Harvard or whatever. And I've written this. Brian can attest to this. He's one of my most phenomenal, mature, best entrepreneur that I have. And he doesn't code either. So it's important. I think, and the important part, the takeaway to me is that you get introduced to the industry. But I'm happier. I'm happy, with kids who understand business and understand, a bigger game than just coding.
Right. I think that access, you mentioned access to the opportunities. So at the college level, there's organizations like Code 24, I know they're in here, that are providing internship opportunities, right? So for the technical folks, we have to provide those opportunities. Same thing at Cable Capital, we leverage our portfolio to create opportunities. So every summer we have 20 to 25 mostly technical fellows come by, right? And they spend 4 days a week with portfolio companies, 1 day a week for professional development, right? So I think the talent that we do have, we have to work with, and not everybody's going to be a coder. Like, you just have to accept it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't want to hop, but the last thing to me is, and I talked about this in the USA Today piece, essentially is networking. And frankly, people deal with people they like, so if you get out, and these things are great, but you got to do the other things too that may be less fun or less interesting, and you got to put in the work. And and when you get to know the other worlds who can be more influential in your careers, I think things will change too. So the networking part of it, being able to work into all different worlds, all worlds effectively.
Great points. I want to ask one more question, then we'll jump into Q&A. Pattern management and biases, we deal with it. And I won't use the word racist, because it's a very deep, hard word. And a lot of times I feel like a lot of African Americans, especially outside of Silicon Valley, would immediately hear that, okay, you know, I heard the story, this tech founder said that he went to meet with a venture capitalist and they wanted to do the deal. They said, can you tone down the blackness? And, you know, he still got his money, you know, he's still raised, but, you know, he was asked to tone down the blackness. Now, you know, some of us can get real offended by that, right? But it's part of the culture because they don't see a lot of us walk through the door. They don't see a lot of us, you know, pitch startups. So when they see that, and like Eric mentioned, is there's like no trust. What would be your suggestion for us to deal with, you know, the biases and the pattern matching that's it just exists, and some of it's just the culture that is not a lot of us in tech, and they don't see a lot of us, they don't trust, and what they do see is the panhandlers, the homeless, the hip hop artists, and all of that.
I got a lot to say.
It's interesting. So, I mean, for me as an entrepreneur, I approach this as, look, there are going to be all types of challenges that I can think of and challenges that I can't think of, so I have to trust them as they come. And whether that happens to be a comment or someone's bias, I'm not going to allow that to affect myself or my product or my team or how we position ourselves. I focus on what I can focus on, and that is the quality of my team, my product, and again, my brand. And that, I mean, that's all you can do. I mean, outside of, I think, explaining it, I mean, the case that you brought up, I think that's just, you know, a conversation that needs to be warranted, especially if that's someone that you're looking to be a venture partner with. But I mean, yeah, I would say that I personally think that you need to focus on what you can and what you can control.
Jump on it. All right, so, I mean, it is harder, right? Like, that's the truth. It's harder if you're black and trying to raise money. It's going to be harder out there, right? I think everybody in this room probably knows that, but if you don't, that's the truth of the matter, right? So you have to be more prepared. You have to have more traction, right, probably, than your counterparts, and it sucks that it is that way. I mean, we don't look at it that way at Kipper Capital. We want to invest in the best entrepreneurs, right? And we go to places where we can find the best entrepreneurs. I mean, that kind of comment, it's like, do you even want to take money, right, from that type of investor, right? Of tone down the blackness, and then they offer you a term sheet, do you even take it, right? So it's like, I think you have to choose your investors wisely. The good entrepreneurs will have lots of options, right? They'll have competing term sheets. So I think it's a partner you don't want to have if they're starting a meeting off, or if that's ever mentioned in meetings. They just don't want the money.
Of course there's pattern matching. Of course. But it's not always just because, you know, it's not black. I'm hella black. Damn. How black I am. And my hair. It's crazy. Are you kidding me? So, you know, and you know, I start walking into a room and they just know that this is a black dude, right? But there's no room I can't go into. And it's because I've been successful. It's because I made money. It's because they know that I'm affiliated with Tony Hsieh. It's because I run money for Tony Hsieh. It's because and it's also because I went to Dartmouth, I went to Wharton, I got 2 masters. So it's all that stuff that adds into it and allows me to get into that room. So that's a pattern that they match, and I'm cool with that. They don't match this other pattern, but they also don't tell me I can't come in. And so, you know, there's a club, there's a men's club out here called the Bohemian Club. And, you know, look it up, it's a trip, right? It's all in the 1800s or whatever. And if you go there, you know, I'm sure there was some crazy stuff going on back in the day, probably a little bit now, but so I've been on the list to get into the Bohemian Club for 20 years. I got in 2 weeks ago, and you go there, and it's not a single person that looks like me. And I interviewed just like this. My hair was nappy, whatever, the whole thing. And so that exists, and you have to deal with that. But if you have everything else tight, then you should, you know, I mean, you should be okay. Yeah. But it exists, and you just have to deal with it, and you have to be, you know, your game has to be super, super tight. So don't come in whack. You know, don't come in kind of half-assed, which is unfortunately what happens sometimes. And again, it's not just us, they do it too. I literally got off a plane, went straight to my office, and there was somebody waiting for me to pitch me their company. It was a white dude. It was horrible. But I did it. Why did I do it? Because there's another venture capitalist that says, Eric, I need you to meet with this guy. So I do it. So guess what? When I have a company that I need him to meet with, guess what he's going to do? He's going to meet with them. So you do it. You know, there's a certain way. What do you want to be? Do you want to be? Depends on what you want. What's your motivation? Do you want to be in it to be, big, I don't know. Are you in it to make some money, or are you in it to do other things? Is it called? Are you a sellout? I don't know. Call me that if you want. I got some money in my pocket. I'm like Nisha was talking earlier, and I quoted it. I'm unapologetically black. I grew up in Richmond in the hood. She's talking about. Ain't nobody a sellout, but I do what I got to do to get what I got to get.
Yeah. And I would say that even though you didn't, everybody's not an entrepreneur, which when you say, even your background and so forth, but that doesn't mean it's still like, you can't get in the door, and I think a point that you'll make, Eric, I think different way of saying it though is that, as Brian said as well, is that, okay, if you're an African-American startup, you're a founder, you want to raise venture capital, you need to be 10 times great. You can't be half-assed.
You just got to be great.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So you got to be great. Everybody comes. You got to be great to get a check.
Yeah, great. All right, with that, let's open up to the question. Stand up, say your name, ask the question. We keep it moving.
All right. Hi everyone, my name is Bianca. I work with Code 2040. Okay, so I have two questions for y'all. Sorry about that. So my first one is, what are other ways to hack the system of getting in the door, specifically in terms of getting into venture capital? Most of the time they look for people who have been entrepreneurs. And if there's an issue of people not creating companies, what are other ways you could look to add value to some of these areas? That's my first question. And the second one is related to financial literacy. A lot of these kids are like first generation, probably making a lot of money, more than their families, and they have that to deal with. So maybe what are some resources that you guys use to become even more financially literate, and what opportunities do you see available to make sure people of color are maintaining wealth once we get to these positions? So that's my question.
Can I just touch on the first question? I'll stop talking. But you don't hack the venture capital business. It's very hard to get in, and there's a couple different ways to do it. One, start a company, sell it for a lot of money, and the VC that gave you money might invite you to be the IR for the company. Or be at a successful, startup that has done well, maybe hasn't been sold. Again, the VC sees how you work on the board, and they'll invite you to become, any entrepreneur resident at their fund. One. Secondly, go make a lot of money and start investing, and then tell your friends that you made a lot of money investing, and would you like to be a part of that, which is what I do.
So I'll speak to my path for VC. It was being technical, so computer science undergrad, did startups, raising money, raising some angel money. The startup actually didn't work out. Did another startup that somewhat worked out, and did another startup. So a lot of startups, I think, and then trying to just show your worth, right? Like, how can you add value to the VC firm? I agree, maybe it's not easy. I went back to business school. A part of that was, because that was one of the paths that I saw. But even that wasn't really guaranteed. It is difficult, but I think if you want to invest, right, and this is something you really want to do, you just kind of have to go out and try to do it, right? And it's the same thing for the startup side of things. Like, you don't know if your startup is going to be successful. You probably have a good feeling that it is, but you don't know, right? So it is difficult, but if this is something you want to do, I would say do it. And then the last point is that I think with the Jobs Act, Title III coming out, which will allow, it pretty much lowers the bar for accredited investors. You can start building that small portfolio from an angel perspective, and then like Eric said, once you build the credibility, you have a demo portfolio in some sense to say, okay, big firm or whatever firm, this is what I've done in the past, my last 10 investments, you might want to add now board.
And Brian, you also took the internship route as well.
Yeah.
And with Kabor, and that played a role.
Oh yeah, so I was interning for 2 summers. So it's an apprentice style business. Anybody would meet with me, I would take the meeting, go to events at night. I mean, it's a hustle in some ways, but then too, I think it's a bit about luck, right? I mean, I think about the internship, how many people applied. It could have been any one of my classmates who got the internship.
Next question. We'll go to you here.
Charleston Bell, one of the quality entrepreneurs that you all may be looking for. My question is, and just to start off with, I'm president of a medical device company called Innovators. What we do is we diagnose life-threatening bacterial infections in less than 30 minutes instead of the current 2 to 5 days. So one of the things, what do we as these quality black entrepreneurs, what do we have to do to kind of get into your deal flow pipeline? Like, especially being in the Valley, and if the network is slightly fragmented, we know introductions, soft introductions are the key to getting investment. You know, what do we have to do to get into that deal flow pipeline?
So I'll say the best way is go through an entrepreneur we've already invested in, right? So if you think about all the founders who invested in 100 companies, if one of those founders sends us an email, we're going to take a look at it. The other way is looking at who we co-invest with, right? So if you're good buddies with Eric, and we've co-invested with Eric, and Eric sends me an email, it's once again kind of the top of the inbox. I think you're out there competing with all the other startups in Silicon Valley and across the U.S., right? And globally as well, right? So it's like there's way more deals than we're going to have time to look at. And that's one way you can kind of hack this, well, 2 ways you can kind of hack the system. That I think, I don't know if that's the same for you, but that's something you can do.
It's identical, and then a lot of it has to do with who introduced you, right? So frankly, there's probably, I don't know, this is weird. Probably two people in here I would take calls from to meet other entrepreneurs. Otherwise, and that's just from an investment standpoint. It was not to say I wouldn't be helpful if somebody else called to say, Eric, would you take it? Yeah, sure, I'll listen and try to be helpful. But to take it seriously, I'll take a call from Brian and what's his name was here? Arthur was here from Interesting, who left. Otherwise, just I just get too many people calling me for deals, and it's likewise to you. So that's one through somebody that we know and care about. And then the other thing is that the valley is small, so when you after meeting with an entrepreneur or an investor, and if things don't go your way, you have to be careful with what comes out of your mouth, because we always hear it back, and also careful about how you deal with the rejection. So there have been companies that I kind of said no to, as VCs we kind of don't always say no. We don't want to say no. You kind of give them a sort of no, and things have come back, and then when they come back, somebody. Brian might say, you know what, Eric, I know you kind of passed, did you know this or this or that? Then I'll take another look, but if they've done something that's not been favorable, then they're washed. They're not going to get another look, so.
Yeah, so one of the things you've missed, and I'm not going to ask, I'm going to tell, just so some of you know, I have 2 angel funds I lead screening for, and I got a 3rd one. My funders are Square and Twitter guys, the guys who IPO'd, including Comcast money, the next Apple guy, Cisco guy. And the entrepreneurs talk about got his money from the head of payments from Google, the head of commerce at Facebook, YouTube money, international money, and is killing him after coming out of 5 stars. So fuck him. Real talk.
What's your question, though?
The question is, why would you mention Kickstarter and Indiegogo and pre-funding these entrepreneurs and domain expertise and driving value by being able to drive actual growth for companies and startups, which is a domain expertise for African American startup and African Americans, period, which drives user bases, which gets them customers, which gets them wins and design. Because that's what they need. Everybody's bringing a growth hacker on. They're bringing a product designer. Even Google had to bring some in. Why haven't you mentioned that as a doorway in? Because that's what people need now. And if you can do campaigns on social networks and pre-fund your shit, you'll get money from whoever the fuck you want.
All right. So
that's what I'm asking.
So to the panelists, what are your thoughts on crowdfunding and Kickstarter and using those for raising resources?
Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they're not the one-off solution for all products.
For your start part.
They serve as strictly pre-sale.
Yeah, like Apple.
So if you're launching a marketplace or a service-based business, that's not a good avenue for you to finance.
Hardware, devices, content, all the new ones.
Right, yes, and
we have portfolio companies who've done it. Form Labs, 3D printer. We went on Kickstarter to raise 150K, ended up raising 2.9. Right, but this was prior to them actually doing seed round. Right, so if you think about software, I don't think that's, and I think you would agree, right? Like,
Lightwave raised almost $2 million. We're seeing it in content and transmedia. It depends on how good you are, because what we look at in angel groups, your first 50 to 100K is going to be raised by friends and family. People are going to put 25, 15, 25, 50 together. You're not going to raise money from a VC unless you've been at a company that excellent.
Kareem, I want to jump. Good point. Thanks for bringing up crowdfunding. I want to jump to the next question. Lady in the back.
Hi, my name is Iman Awalam. I'm the CEO and founder of a startup called Curatoric. My inquiry is with regards to something one of you mentioned earlier. I'm sorry to dive into quote-unquote nappy hair. That's how you refer to yourself. I apologize.
Apologize for what? I said it.
But my question is, there were a couple of articles that came out over the past week. One featured in TechCrunch and another that came out today in Cando Daily with regards to whether or not to request introductions from investors, particularly VCs and angels, and whether or not that's an effective route. So the first one was like from some YC alum who were like, all the requested introductions were like, they didn't work out. But the introductions that came in because the investors wanted to meet with us were how we actually raised funding. What is your stance with regards to that?
I want to answer you, but I'm not sure exactly what your question is.
So my question is, should entrepreneurs request introductions to investors? Or should they assume that if their product is worthy, the investors will find them?
Yeah, you can do that and not get money, but yeah, you gotta, we'll find you. If you're great, we're gonna find you.
Right.
And if you're not, if you're on the verge of being great and it's latent greatness, then you gotta request, introductions. Yeah, you gotta talk to whomever you know. And for instance, for me, in my network, and ask and request an introduction. Otherwise, if you call me blindly, I'll take, probably won't take your call, but after having met you today, I would probably take your call and say, yeah, let's meet. But otherwise, no, I'm not gonna talk to you if somebody that I know doesn't say, Eric, you should meet with her. And you know what, maybe I don't like her so much, Eric, but just meet with her anyway.
The Valley has made it known in terms of the angel investors, venture capitalists, that the number one way is to get an introduction through, like they said earlier, somebody done deal for a bit or an existing entrepreneur. And take what you read on tech blogs as a grain of salt, because everybody's in the business of page views. Sir?
Hi, I'm Joshua Johnson from K2ED News and K2ED Public Radio. My question is about historically black colleges and universities. Last year, the United Negro College Fund held an innovation summit in Silicon Valley to try to deepen the partnerships between HBCUs and Google and Apple and Stanford and Facebook and others. And I'm curious as to what your take is on the future of HBCUs in tech. There are a lot of HBCUs that are suffering right now. Howard University is in a lot of financial trouble and just laid off 200 people. Florida A&M is finally trying to right itself with a new president. And it seems like some of the culture of HBCUs in terms of being a very kind of a caring cocoon to kind of build your professional skills totally does not match the culture of Silicon Valley in certain ways. Do you think there's a future for HBCUs with regards to Silicon Valley, or is it kind of a struggling, antiquated series of institutions that doesn't really fit into the Silicon Valley culture?
I think there's a future if they get it together they want there to be. Black Founders has done several hackathons on HBCU campuses. We've done Morgan State, we did Atlanta, we did Howard. But a lot of that has been without a lot of support from the administration. So I think if HBCUs want to be players in technology and have their students have long, successful careers in tech, then they need to do what they need to do that. And that means teaching technical skills that are actually relevant today. That means encouraging things like hackathons. That means encouraging people to go places that might not be Google, Facebook, a blue chip tech company brand name, or IBM even, and encouraging their students to take risk and maybe join a startup or maybe start a startup. So I think, can HBCUs have a future? Sure. But they've got a lot of work to do.
You got something to say, Hank?
Yeah, sure. You just gotta be great, man. I mean, you gotta be, it doesn't matter where you go to school. You know, maybe you don't have the support that you would there, but okay, go get the support. You know somebody. If this is something that you really want to do, by the way, those are the people that we invest in, people who really want to do this, because it's very hard. Once you start it, it's going to be fantastic because you maybe raise a little bit of money and you're going to start your company that's going to get going. All of a sudden it's going to suck and you're going to hate it. You're going to want to figure out why I did this. You're going to want to go get a job at Google. And in the meantime, you got people who've given you money. So you got to figure out, so where's your heart? What do you want to do? Why are you passionate about this? So those people who have that in them will figure out how to get better at tech. Whatever that means, meeting people, or talk. I talk to kids from all those schools, right? But they found somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody else who can help them through it. So those are the passionate ones who make it through. But as a whole, is it going to be a Stanford? No, but nor is Dartmouth going to be a Stanford from a tech standpoint. And Wharton is a joke, and I went to Wharton. It is a joke in the tech world, despite the fact that we have LinkedIn and some other stuff. But so not everybody's going to be Stanford because it's just it's in its DNA. It's been that way for a very long time. So yeah, you can't. They're going to be just fine, but only those people who are bright stars will make it, and that's how it should be, frankly.
So is there anything that you see, because your answer had to do with something institutionally that HBCUs can do. Your answer has to do more with the individuals at the school.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you see anything institutionally that these schools can do to provide classes, organizations, better administration?
Sure.
Exactly.
Take another coding class, sure, that's fine. But get a CS degree. So what? If you suck, you suck.
But
There's support.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I'm going to him. We got a great shirt, and then the lady, and then this guy. So.